Hello, my name is Chris Fitzgerald. I'm the jazz bass instructor at the University of Louisville. This tutorial is meant to cover a basic right-hand jazz pizzicato technique for the double bass. And I want to cover three basic topics. The first is using as much flesh as possible on the string to produce the sound. Second, the use of arm weight rather than the small muscles of the forearm. Use the weight of the arm to produce the sound, to produce the motion that makes the sound. And third, the use of the wrist to cushion the blow of making this motion repetitively. So to get started, we'll start with a finger on the string. Take your right index finger and point it straight forward as though you're pointing at something. And then take your right shoulder and elbow and rotate that finger 45 degrees so that the side surface of the finger, which is going to be the one that plays, is facing down and towards you. Then take that finger and lower it and set it right on the fingerboard right next to the G string, like so. Now that the finger is on the string, we can focus on the motion of the right arm, which will produce the tone. To start with, press down with this finger into the fingerboard, and then drag the finger across the fingerboard as though the string isn't even there. The whole point is that we play through the board. Think of not even playing the string in the beginning, think of playing the fingerboard. The strings just happen to be in the way, and they will be dragged under the finger and then they will pop loose. And when they're struck in this way, they will actually vibrate parallel to the fingerboard, which is what we want. So on the G string, just drop your elbow and drag the finger across the string. Same on the D string. A string. And the E string. Now the E string is a little different because with each of the previous strings, when you pull through the string, the finger comes to rest on the next lowest string. So when you play on the G, the finger comes to rest on the D. When you play on the D, the finger comes to rest on the A. When you play the A, the finger comes to rest on the E. But when you play the E string, there's no further string for the finger to rest on, so you have to have a sort of alternate plan. Different players do different things. Some players actually just release their entire hand from the fingerboard, including the thumb, so the thumb which has been anchored under the fingerboard. Some players, when they play on the E string, will simply let their whole hand come off the bass and then replace it when they're ready to play again. Other players, most notably Charlie Hayden, will play on the E string with their middle finger and keep their thumb anchored, and so that the middle finger, once it comes off the string, will snap back and make a snapping sound into the palm. So on Charlie's records, you actually hear, whenever he's playing on the E string, you hear this sound with every note on the E string, and that sounds like this. What I like to do is to keep the thumb anchored on the fingerboard, on the underside of the fingerboard, and follow the curved radius of the fingerboard with the index finger that's playing, and then let the forearm, the underside of the forearm, actually come to rest on the side of the top of the bass, like this. Everything stays connected, and the arm is actually stopped from going further by resting on the side of the bass. If you look at the side of the bass, you can see a worn away spot where this has been happening for a lot of years. Next, we're going to go to a couple of close-up shots which will allow you to see some of these concepts in closer detail. To get as much surface of the finger on the string as possible, lay the finger flat as you can, onto the fingerboard, and then pull back on the string and actually pull it out of alignment with the others long enough to make an impression on your finger. And when you do this for 5 seconds or so, you can actually end up with an indentation on your finger, and you can see the path of the string as it goes along the finger. So on the G string, I'm getting an indentation that goes all the way from roughly the tip of the finger all the way up to that middle knuckle of the finger. And that's what I'm going for to get a sound, because I feel like the more flesh I can get on the string, the rounder and thicker the sound will be, and it'll sound something like this, as opposed to playing with just the tip, which I think is a thinner sound. On the D string, it looks more like this. The further down the strings you go, each string on a typical bass setup gets a little bit higher off the fingerboard than the last. So the further down you go, you're actually able to get deeper into the finger. And so on the D string, the path of the string looks something like that and sounds like this. For the A string, it's higher off the board still, and that one will be almost directly down the middle of the finger, like so. And then on the E string I can get almost all the way up to the top knuckle of the hand, although I don't always play that way. But the line that one produces, you could almost get your finger under the string, and that looks like this. So I'll play a few strokes on each string to show sort of what it looks like in succession and what it sounds like. Probably the most important and one of the most difficult things to master about tone production on the bass is the role of the arm weight, not resorting to using movement of the finger, but rather continuing to use the motion of the arm falling across the string over and over. And then also the role of the wrist in acting as a shock absorber for the weight of the arm. To get the arm weight aspect, all you really have to do is think of exerting down pressure on the finger. Your elbow is high, and you're exerting down pressure into the board. So I'm pressing the board almost as if it's coming back towards me. And then I'm drawing the elbow to my right, letting it fall and catch on the next string. And this is easy enough to do, but if you do it repetitively, if you do it over and over and over without having a shock absorbing mechanism built into the wrist, then your forearm can tend to get very tense very quickly, especially on up-tempo songs where you're playing for 5 or 10 minutes without any shock absorbing in your wrist. So if you play with just a stiff wrist, it would look like this. Short amount of time, this is starting to tense up. So what I want is for the wrist to act like a shock absorber with each note, so that as I play, the wrist starts off, it comes high with the elbow, it falls, and then breaks in this shape. So that the wrist with each note acts like a wave, as though it's just water flowing. Some people describe it as making a circle. And so I'll play a little bit with each string and show sort of how that works. On the G string, so the way that it should work is that if someone were playing a walking bass line, just solid quarter notes, that you would see this motion happening again and again and again, and that the only adjustment to it would be the height of the arm, and the only reason for that would be which string was being played at any given time. So if you were to watch a walking bass line, hopefully it would look something like this, and just pay attention to the movement of the wrist. So for a brief summary, in this tutorial we've covered three basic things. One, the placement of the finger on the string with as much flesh as possible to get the fattest possible sound. Two, using arm weight to produce the power to play the string rather than finger motion. And three, the shock absorbing mechanism of the wrist, so that the wrist, rather than being stiff, flexes with each stroke. In the next installment of the series, the subject will be about relaxed playing technique, playing in a way that allows you to match the physical motions that you make when playing to match the divisions inherent in the music itself. Until then,